Aditya, hi, good to have you with us. How have you been?
It's good. It's good. How are you? All good.
I am doing well, Aditya. It's good to have you with us. We've
Yeah.
been, I've been looking forward to the session, and that's largely for the incredible work that you've been doing at PedalStart, right? I think India is a complex market. Businesses need a lot of handholding and direction, right? When it comes to their ability to understand the consumer, and how do you scale? There are a lot of complexities and compliances. So it's a complex environment, right, to operate in. At PedalStart, you are essentially helping businesses crack that piece, right? Do that efficiently so that they can focus on their core activity, which is growth, right? And engaging better with their customers and product planning and so on and so forth. That also that you help with, but you give them a very solid foundation, right? So that they don't have to, waste a lot of resources, waste a lot of time. Can very quickly tackle a variety of these elements and get to business, right? And this makes
Right.
it very, very interesting at many levels. Because the complexity of the market has kind of changed in the last 2.5 years, right? So it's good to have you with us.
Great.
Before I start this conversation, I'd love you to give us a quick round of introduction, and we start talking about better stuff from there on.
Great. So this side Aditya. I have been. So I and Manas has started PedalStart back in 2021 early.
Mm-hmm.
That point in time, we had a vision of empowering the entrepreneurs, basically the first time entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
So we have just kind of a gut and intuition that it could be the early stage or the ideation stage where main founders stumble, right?
Sure.
So we started with talking to certain 200 or 300 entrepreneurs first. So we reached out to them through LinkedIn, through Facebook. So these are the medium through which we tried contacting them.
Sure.
And then when we talked to them what exact issues they are facing,
Mm-hmm.
so they started saying we need funds. So 70-75% said they needs fund.
Right.
So we just parked that aside, and then we started conversation with them. If you need funds, then we are sure you are done with your ideation, you are done with your some kind of a POC,
Mm-hmm.
and majorly some MVP as well. But when
Right.
we started discussing with them, so they were hardly around any of such
Mm-hmm.
stage. Right.
Right.
Majorly, many of them were at ideation stage when we
Mm-hmm.
concluded with them, and it's not just one directional analysis I'm saying. So it was after the discussion with all those entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
So they then just understood what exactly we are trying to make them understand. So that's the point where we realized that this is kind of gap between the entrepreneurs and their thought process.
Sure.
So nowadays also when we talk to certain entrepreneurs, they come on the platform just to get funds, right? So they don't understand that they need to provide some value to the investors, right? It's not the other way around that we are searching for the funds. Investors
Right.
also look for funds, right?
Sure.
So that is what we started, me and Manas. Then we thought that we would be providing incubation first, and
Mm-hmm.
since it was COVID time, so we started it offline, online.
Interesting.
And so we start with incubation and then move towards the acceleration. So
Right.
as soon as MVP done, we move towards the acceleration part. So
Mm-hmm.
this is the whole model. Second point is the team factor, as you also mentioned. Team factor is very important, plays an important role when it comes to any first time founder starting their idea.
Right.
So we are moving around with kind of providing them a support to have co-founder in place. Majorly, many of the founders lack in having a CTO, because technically not every founder is sound. So that's the space where we are getting into. So there are many things that we are basing upon. The incubation part, as I mentioned, then we are moving towards the acceleration, and the funding part comes between the acceleration only. So this is what we are getting into.
Interesting. Aditya, now this is an exciting space, right? Like we discussed, businesses need this. India is a complex market, right? I'd love to understand, how do you go about doing it, right? So is there a selection process to it? Or are you open for all? What's the engagement methodology that you offer, right? Because all of what you're saying is, while it's all very, very interrelated, these are all very, very independent tasks, right? For example, fundraising is a completely different animal, right? When it comes to, say, for example, your compliances, right? Now that's something which is very, very different, right? So, an organization requires 20 things in its journey, and path to growth. I'd love to understand what's the construct of your relationship with them.
Great. So as I mentioned, so we basically are a founders community, right? And when we say founders community, it gets two kind of people on the platform. One are basically enthusiasts who want to learn about entrepreneurship and startup ecosystem. Second are people who have an idea and want to get on the platform like us. So right now we are targeting on the second part. First part we would be targeting in a month or so. Now coming to the point of incubation and acceleration, as you asked about selection process. So we are not selecting anybody. We are just going with two points to take care when a startup comes to us. The zeal and enthusiasm of the startup or the startup founder. Second, his domain knowledge. These are the two criteria that we keep once we select. I should not say select. Once the startup or the founders get onboarded. So these are the two criteria. We actually don't want to be selective since majorly all accelerators are selection based. Some incubation are also selection based. We don't want to keep it a selection based cohort engagement. We actually felt, so when I talk about 300 startup founders, now on the platform there are 3,000 enthusiasts, and believe me, more than 50% are from tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So that gives us an indication that how many people are there and how many more people in tier 2, tier 3 cities are there who actually want to start their startup. And it's not about everyone who are lagging or somewhere behind some other founders who are from tier 1. They actually just lag consultation or maybe hand-holding kind of a thing, because they are kind of apart from the startup ecosystem. So yes, we are not selection based. Once a startup founder comes to the platform, we just analyze what exactly stage they are at. So we believe there are two basically dynamic points on which the whole startup will behave. First is the founder profile, second is the idea. So we check the feasibility and all other factors of idea. We check how founder is, where exactly he lies, and we try to develop both. Right. So we try to move founders as such, and then when we move founders, idea will definitely move. So this is the analogy that we are building kind of. So it's not a selection process. We just incubate people. So it's a subscription based model. And second, as I said, we move from ideation, we move from incubation to acceleration. As soon as MVP is completed, then we move them to the acceleration where we charge a certain equity. So this is the kind of a model that we are right now in.
Very interesting. Aditya, I'd love to understand what are some of the features that so we've talked about all that, right? You kind of in a way touched upon this, right? I'd love to understand the features of this, right? What are the features, for example, across stages, right? So say first phase of engagement, right? What are the features that you offer in this model of yours at PedalStart, and what are the features that, for example, are available in the second stage, right? I mean, you've touched upon, for example, technology support, right? I'd love you to break it down for us.
So, when it comes to the stage 1, so you rightly mentioned, so we categorize it from stage 1 and stage 2. Stage 1, basically both the stages gives everything. But the point, how the difference comes is, when they are at stage 1, they just need to understand the importance of ideation. They need to understand the importance of what market they will be targeting, and they need to understand the importance of POC. So we are providing guidance, mentorship, brainstorming. So we act as a semi co-founder to them. Plus, we don't execute with them. We are kind of semi-executing with them. So that gives them clarity that they would be the people who need to execute and comprehend everything. We are just sitting at the back and we are helping them out, right? Now the features part is we are giving them weekly call with the EIR, or we call MATE. So we have brought in a concept of MATE. So in our whole journey, we have 3 to 4 stakeholders: mates, mentor, domain experts, and investors. Investors, domain experts, mentors are self-explanatory. I would like to touch upon the mates, how we are different from other incubator or accelerator when it comes to mates. So mates carry a profile of either they are entrepreneurs who basically have started their idea somewhere around 1 or 2 years back, but because of some reason they have quit their idea. Okay. Why they are important to this platform is they understand the entrepreneurship ecosystem. They have done their own startup, so they understand from their mistakes what they have made. Plus they have experiences, they have learning. So they will help every startup founders to build on their ideation and move ahead in the journey. So we basically say we'll move the founders from 0 to 1 and then 1 to n. So this is what we are giving. Secondly, the profile could be a person, EIR could be a person who has been the early or a core team member of any startup. So he understands the ideation stage, he understands the execution stage, he understands how he can move a startup from 0 to 1 and then 1 to n. So this is the basically, these are the services through, and we are providing it through mates. Yeah. Then comes the importance of domain experts and mentors. We are not connecting any mentors at the early stage of any startup because we feel there would be a frequency gap. Early startup founder would ask any mentor, "क्या मुझे ये वाला idea करना है नहीं करना," right? And this is not something any mentor would like to answer. So that is where mates would pitch in. And once they reach a POC stage or MVP stage, then we connect them to the mentors. Domain expert is a field where we can connect them to an early stage also. But yes, mentors we don't connect them to. And then as soon as they move to the second stage, so as soon as they complete POC or MVP, then we move them to the next stage. And then from there we start their funding and all other things. So this is how the whole process is. Basically, we are giving them the calls with the EIRs. And it's not restricted to 1 call a week. It can be 2, it can be 3, depending on the speed. And so we don't move, we don't have our speed. We move based on the speed of the startup founders.
Got it. Now that's an interesting perspective, right? Now, what are the biggest challenges? When you're talking about startup founders, right, or founders in general? I think is there resistance to change, right? And not in the wrong way, right? You've largely built a thesis. You have a certain direction that you want to pursue, right? There are a lot of factors that you consider in the process, right? I at a distance, or you at a distance, right? But possibly have not analyzed those aspects that minutely. We possibly have certain experience, right? But that granularity is something which is very, very important, right? Right or wrong, I'm not really commenting on that, right? But essentially, what happens is that when a founder is in that journey, there is a certain resistance. They don't necessarily are willing to change. That's a huge problem for any accelerator, right? A lot of accelerators try and solve that with capital, right? And of course, we're going to talk about that in a bit, right? But you cannot fund all the businesses, right? There are businesses that you have to work with and bring them to a point where they become funded, right? And I think that's a huge challenge in itself. I've run an accelerator. I've experienced a lot of these problems firsthand, right? That resistance is the most detrimental piece for any founder in the journey, right? What's your thought about that? I mean, how do you tackle that? Are these EIRs that you have, or this model that you have, are you able to help them visualize, the right direction? Because that saves them time, that saves them resources, that possibly helps them get more customers, become self-reliant in a lot of ways, right? That resistance and that mindset becomes a huge impediment, right? I'd love to understand from you how you're looking at it and solving all of them yourself.
Yeah. So you truly rightly mentioned, I think, about the mindset and the resistance that comes in a startup founder. It happened with us also. And one analogy every startup founder takes with them is we need to pitch to 100 investors. And I'm just mentioning it when they require funds. It's not early stage analysis. So many of them say we need to at least touch upon 100 investors and then one investor will invest. So this is the wrong thought process that they are getting into. Now coming back to the resistance part, it is there, right? And we try to so basically we don't try to convince any startup founder. So we just run the show. So how we run the show is, so let's suppose any startup founder comes and they believe that they have done MVP, right? Then we take them back to the journey. We just understand them how they have done ideation. So, major problem occurs when they say that this is the problem statement, but actually it's not a problem statement, right? They say that this is an opportunity gap, but actually it's not an opportunity gap. So how we validate? The first funda that we take is just go and get into the market and get the problem statement validation from the customers. So many startup founders come to us and say, please connect us to that mentor. We need to validate our problem statement. Kindly help us out in validating the problem statement or solution. So the basic funda that they don't get is the problem statement could never be validated by a mentor, by Aditya, by Manas, or PedalStart, or by a commenter also, right? It should be validated through customers. So this is the first thought process that they fail into, or that they get the wrong way. Then the second is changing the business model. Many founders come on the platform stating a broader vision. Stating a broader vision is not bad, but you should have a proper path, proper strategy to reach that broader vision, right? But the startup founders comes and say, we need to do all these things. We need to do all the 10 things on priority. So these are the certain things that we actually feel and that we actually get on the platform on a daily basis. So, we kind of talk to them, we kind of make them understand if you are doing, so it's the basic concept, jack of all trade, king of none kind of a thing. So you just start doing a particular thing at once, do that properly, move to the next stage. Amazon right now delivering in one day. When they started, they were not delivering in one day, right? Now they are bringing in the concept. Zepto and Blinkit are delivering in 20 minutes. Can we think of this in, back 7 or 8 years ago? No, we can't. So these are the things that we kind of align with the startup founders, and we don't just say that you are wrong. We just kind of have a process of understanding, so how we do it, we just ask them, go to the consumer, go to the customer, whether they say it's a problem statement or not, whether what you are thinking is right or wrong. When they get the result, when they get the analysis of the survey, they themselves understand the problem statement. Now, people just directly come to us, this is the idea, we are not making any revenue, we have only 100 users, kindly fund us. And they are so rigid that they think they have paid us the subscription charge just for getting the funds. So we just make them understand funding is not at all a problem in the whole ecosystem. It's just giving the right value to the investors, giving the addressing the right problem statement that they're in the ecosystem. So we try to manage this through these kind of conversations. And one more point. One more point. So we never say that a startup founder that comes on platform will make their idea big, right? It's just that, so there is one more thought process. If they're going to fail in 1 year, then we are there to make sure that if the idea and founder is not right fit, then they can win 3 months and then they decide that this is not going to work. So we at least save their 9 months, and now they can maybe have a different problem statement targeted, and they can do some other work, but it saves them 9 months at least. So this is also an analogy that we are trying to build.
But Aditya, that's usually a difficult one to explain, right? I think founders, in a way, in India, start to think that, if there is funding, that's a validation for what they're doing, right? And I think more than the market, they're looking for that validation for themselves, right? To please them on most occasions, right? Now, you mentioned something very interesting, which is that of, going out and seeking customers' opinion and customers' review and, what you're doing and so forth, right? Now, there is another challenge, which is that, right? Now, the customer on a lot of occasions does not necessarily very clearly knows what he or she wants, right? Unless there's a parallel that they can compare this new service with, or this new product, right? Now, on a lot of occasions, what founders get is a very mixed sort of a review, right? And at the same time, they're running out of these resources, right? Now, that becomes a very delicate sort of a situation, right? How do you see that? Because you know for a fact that this is a product which, with certain amount of marketing or push, right, could do so much more better. The customer does not necessarily seem to be aware of it, which is a very classical sort of a problem. In any case, startups are there to sort of discuss all of this, right? A small round of funding could possibly help him or her do better, right? Do you make some interim funding also available, or there is a process that you follow that, once you complete this process, once you've engineered yourself, right? Once there is an MVP, which is right, once you've identified your customer segment, right, which is very, very critical to the entire scheme of things, only then you engage in that process of fundraising, okay? Because that, like I said, right, there's a certain commitment to the investors, there's a certain ROI that needs to be done. It's a complex piece, right? Which is the piece? How do you really go about that? I mean, what's the is it option A, where you look at interim funding just for him to get to point A to B, which could be a pre-MVP to an MVP sort of one, or do you look at option B, where they have to get to that visibility of sorts, right, before they can go out and use your platform to raise capital? What's the choice that you make there?
Yeah.
Or so is it case to case basis, right? I mean, we're in a complex market. I mean, you can't have a fair answer to you cannot have like a hard-coded answer.
Particularly a hard-coded answer. True. So it's basically subjective. So we need to kind of have a mix of both, right? Sure. So there would be certain ideas that I feel would do good. There would be certain ideas that Manas think that would good, and there would be certain ideas where our investors think they would do good, right? Sure. So gut feeling, intuition always work. So I'll talk about the fun part. So we also understood that there would be certain ideas. If they get certain impetus at the start, they will pull it off. So we have kind of get onto a funds part where we would be disbursing 2.5 CR of funds, and this would be to 10 startups. So basically 25 lakhs per startup, and that would be based on certain criteria. That would be based on the idea, that would be based on founders. So there would be two kind of points where we would be validating those startups. So yes, we are getting into this, and you correctly mentioned if they get some funds, then in near future it could be a possibility that they can do big. Second point, so we have got 6-7 fundings through our platform, and 2 of them were pre-revenue, and one is basically pre-product, I would say. And second one of them was actually having a product. So I won't say that it would be a pre-product, but both of them were pre-revenue. So these 2 are pre-revenue. Then there are 2 more startups who are actually revenue, who are running a revenue of around 2 CR in an year, right? So the 2 pre-revenue, 2 revenue. 2 of them, one of them is kind of an idea based, where we believe that idea will do good. And one of them is in between, having a MVP in place, right? So, so as you mentioned, that validation comes. So when we were raising funds for ourselves, so as soon as we got the funding, we get the news out. Then there were people whom we connected before. Then they started coming in and say, we would like to kind of fund you guys, right? So there comes the validation part, and there are many investors who say just bring lead investors and we would follow. So that only means they want to validate their idea, right? So that's the point where we kind of getting into the 2.5 CR fund. But generally speaking, there are so many startups. So so basically investors look to make money. They want to put money in ideas that will boom in 2-3 years, right? So we need to kind of figure that out, that what idea, what founder fit is there, so that we can get them funding, right? And it is something that's not related to what stage they are. It actually depends on what idea they have. Major investors on the platform, 80% say we just look for the founders. Obviously they look at the idea also, they just look for the founders. And there are certain ideas that kind of do something where customers don't know whether they want or not, as you mentioned. So talk about Flipkart, talk about e-commerce. We couldn't think where right now e-commerce is. Once we started, so had they gone into a survey, I'm not sure how many people would have said yes, because if let's suppose I need to buy a shirt, it was very difficult for me to comprehend how can I buy a shirt. I need to look good in that shirt. Maybe a possibility, red looks good on the mannequin, but if I wear red, I'm not able to look good. So these are the certain things, and these things comes on gut basis and intuition basis. So there is one more platform who's doing O2N. That gut says that if we do good, execute good, then it would become big. So it's kind of a gut based, it's kind of intuition based, and it's for the investors also. So when I talk to many investors, they say there are certain options that we got, but we didn't turn out because of the gut said it will not do good. So these are the certain points.
Interesting. There are a bunch of very interesting points that you kind of highlighted in the process, right? My worry is and my fear is, right, as soon as you have that, as soon as you start dealing it with capital, right, I think the pressure is very different, right? And the pressure on you and the PedalStart team is going to be very different, right? Because then you are kind of then as soon as capital gets injected, there's a turnaround that has to happen, right?
That's true.
ROI has to be very definitive, right? In many ways. I mean, the numbers could vary, right? But there's a term to it that gets attached, right? What essentially happens is that you'll only be able to select slightly more mature businesses, right? Which could just sort of be very different from the original model and the original that you started, right? Nevertheless, Aditya, where does the portfolio stand right now? What are the kind of companies that you have? You've given us the larger number of community and the community members that you have, right? But what are the number of incubated companies that you have, and which are the sectors that you have a bite in?
Yeah. So we are sector agnostic, though we don't touch upon deep tech, but other than that, we are sector agnostic. When it comes to the portfolio companies, there are majorly right now coming the companies like into EV, right? Then e-com is also the one, D2C is the other one, EdTech and health tech. These are the 4-5 domains or industry where many of the startups are coming. Talking about number, right now we have 3,500 plus community members on the platform. Then we have right now 300 paid subscription. I'm talking about subscription paid startups on the platform. So then comes the funding part. 6 companies have got funding through us, right? And yeah, this is the number like. And talking about 300 plus startups, majorly are into ideation stage since we incubate them. Right. Approximately 25-30 have moved to MVP, and now we are just starting with their fundraise. And yeah, these are the numbers. If talking about revenue, approximately 12 to 13 are making revenue. Though they have crossed the MVP, now we are in a stage to make them start earning or start generating the revenue. You talked about getting the funding of the startup. You just mentioned basically about this part where you know, when the companies raise, when the founder raise funds, how we take care of it, and it's get very critical based on the, you know, that needs to be under control, right? So we are building a dedicated team for all the startups that get funds through us. So as soon as they get funding through us, so we have some equity share also. So that's kind of you know, put ourselves in a space where we need to work with them and see how they are operating. And if you see, there are VCs also who are getting into the same space where they are working with the founders to execute things on the ground. They are putting their EIRs or mate or buddies with the founders, so to take them ahead and to move them ahead in the journey. So yes, we are doing that also.
Interesting. Aditya, we are moving towards the end of the conversation. You know, would love to understand what's you know, if somebody is to apply, right? A lot of people are going to be watching this, right? And you know, when they want to apply, what's the process of application?
Yeah, so it's very simple. Just need to go on PedalStart.com. There is a apply now button. Just click on apply now. There would be an approximately 10 to 15 fields that they need to enter. So major fields are their phone number, mail ID. Team size is one where we actually take a look on. There would be a column, a field where they need to describe about their idea. Then comes the website. So website gives us a validation whether the founder is serious or not. And then there are certain 4-5 more fields to it. So as soon as they fill the form, they'll receive a mail through us stating they can book a slot with us. So it's kind of a wish list that we have already created. So there are people in the line to get into the subscription model or to get into the incubation, online incubation. So as soon as they get the mail, they'll have a Calendly link and they can just book a slot to talk to our onboarding team. And then accordingly, based on the time slot they choose, onboarding team gets connected to them. They have a talk. They just kind of startup founder just kind of need to make the onboarding team understand why they want to get on the platform, and would that be a value to them and to value to us. And then as soon as things matches, then they would be onboarded on the platform with a subscription fee. If they are ahead in the journey, if they have crossed MVP, then we could directly get them to the acceleration program also, but that's very unlikely to happen. In 300-350, approximately 2 to 3% of such startups have come who have directly came on the equity. But yes, it can happen. So, and then subscription, and then we can start rolling.
Interesting, super. Aditya, it was an absolutely spectacular session. Thank you so much for doing this, right? You know, how I wish you know, we can continue to talk, right? I think what you're doing is incredible. I think what you're doing is just so much more needed, right? And especially now in an environment which is as complex as the one we are in, this is definitely the need of the hour, right? I think a lot of founders are going to need this handholding. You know, the good part is that, you know, people have become just so much more serious about entrepreneurship as an option, you know, as a career option, right? If I can put it that way, right? Because it's just so much more deeper, so much more, you know, there's just so much more energy and passion that's required to run a business, right? But I think a lot of people are graduating and crossing over, right? They don't necessarily look for the kind of comfort that they get in their, you know, lives across their jobs.
Right.
This is possibly becoming the new norm of sorts, right? And we're going to see more traction. The fact of the matter is, institutions like PedalStart, right? Their relevance and their need is going to become so much more critical going forward. So you're possibly what you're doing is, while of course it's business, right? I think it's also very, very impactful, right? Which is just so much phenomenal at many levels. We wish you all the very best, Aditya.
Thanks,
you,
Ashu.
the team at PedalStart. Godspeed, and we wish to see more and more impact that you create, right? And not just in the tier A cities, but more across tier 2 and tier 3 cities, right? And more physical, if that can happen.
That's true.
All the very best, Aditya. Thank you so much to have
Thanks
you.
For hosting.
And
thanks for hosting PedalStart. Yeah,
Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for hosting PedalStart. Bye. Cheers. Good luck.